trees. We had to come to this at some point. We've asked the council to give us a figure for how much it's spent on legal proceedings, both against tree campaigners and for applications for injunctions. We haven't had a response yet. Let's talk about this, Julie. The trees have been an issue, obviously.
Yes.
And I think it's now, if I'm right, and tell me if you disagree, it's gone against what's being chopped down, and it has come to the way that the council treats some of the people who live in its city. And some people would say that taking out injunctions, which you can do because you're doing it with taxpayers' money, which threaten individuals with bankruptcy, is bullying and a scary tactic from a council.
Well, I think we've explained on many occasions, not necessarily on this programme, but to the protesters themselves. They come to Cabinet and they come to Council every month and ask these particular questions. We've explained the need to take out injunctions. We're not taking out injunctions to stop people protesting. In fact, I've said on many occasions I've been part of many protests, in fact, particularly against the Thatcher years, during those years, and also my own government against the invasion of Iraq, and cuts to NHS and those sorts of things. So I've been part of a protest movement on many occasions. We do not object and actually encourage people to protest where they feel that something is not right or not acceptable. So the injunctions are not against people protesting. It's quite clear that the injunctions are against people invading a health and safety zone to stop people from working. So that's what an injunction is for. And it's quite clear on the evidence. And in fact, I have had emails telling me from some people and some individuals that they will stop at nothing to ensure that a tree is not taken down or not removed. So there is a need to take out those injunctions to ensure that we can create a safety zone and the workforce can work safely within that safety zone. And in fact, keep not just the workforce safe, but other members of the public as well safe. So that's the injunction.
You know, on this whole tree scenario, there has been a complete loss of plot. You know it's not gone the right way. No, I mean, the PR's been bad, the advice has been bad. And of course, like everybody else, like every other BBC presenter, we're straight down the middle. But you can't watch a middle-aged woman get arrested for blowing a horn in a policeman's face and think, actually, we've gone wrong here.
I don't. I mean, I've always made it clear we talked about blurred lines before and the role of the council and the role of other agencies.
Well, this is because this is where the officers have taken the most flack. Paul Billington, for example.
Yeah, well, this is quite clear. We do not arrest people. That is up to the police. The police will decide if they want to pursue a criminal case through the Crown Prosecution Service, for example, and that's their job to do that. So if someone has been arrested...
But there feels like there's been collusion on this, doesn't it? I mean, the stuff that's been released, the silver command of the council, the police and Amy, it feels like this is a big gang picking on people at the posh end.
Well, all I can say is genuinely and sincerely, I am trying to get a solution to this issue. We are now in the middle of a pause where we are trying to find compromises from all sides. I have sat in my office on numerous occasions with members of the tree protest movement, because some members of STAG, some aren't members of STAG, members of particular streets like Western Road, Montgomery Road. I have sat in my office with many of the residents out there that choose to be involved in protesting. And I have made it absolutely clear that I am prepared, the council is prepared to compromise. Amy needs to compromise, the council need to compromise, but also some members of the tree protest movement also need to compromise.
We're going to speak to a couple of those in a moment, but just one other thing whilst we're still on kind of being led by advice. And you mentioned earlier on that some of the advice that you take, and you don't want to take the right advice. Let's talk about the legal advice, because there is everything that's gone off with these tree campaigners, and we had Benoit Compan just last week, just the day before he was supposed to be in court, being told that the charges against him were dropped. Also, the amount of money that Sheffield City Council appears to have spent on the Spearmint Rhino case, 130,000 quid. What's happening with the legal department? Why are they making so many mistakes?
Well, actually, ironically, when I mentioned earlier that when I could cite examples of where we've got it wrong, I think the sexual entertainment venues was one where we absolutely got it wrong. And we as councillors it was actually the licensing committee, took advice regarding the process that we go through on consultation on the policy. At the time, councillors genuinely believed that the policy was right based on that advice. And then we finally found ourselves in a situation where, in actual fact, we got something quite wrong.
But what happens when those people advise you and cost 130 grand, which isn't the council's money, it's council taxpayers' money? What happens to the people who gave you that bad advice? What happens to the people who tell you to keep people like Benoit Compan worried for months?
Well, a couple of things. On that one, around the case that was dropped the other day, I think that was to do with the Crown Prosecution Service. I'm not sure it was it wasn't a council case that was dropped the other day, wasn't it?
Was not in the public interest. But that, to be fair, is about the whole ethos of that campaign. Yeah, on that one.
I think it's unfair to say that all council officers are on £130,000 because they're not. Some of the certainly people within the legal...
Someone struggle by on 90.
Well, yeah, and of course they do. I absolutely understand that, and that's what they're paid to do, to give good advice. They're supposed to be experts and knowledgeable in their subject and in that area. Now, as I say, in any walk of life, with any industry, with any sector, with any, whether you're in the hospitality area or whether you're in the legal profession, then officers they do the job to the best of their ability. So I believe that when our legal team or our officers are giving us advice, I think they are definitely doing it in the best interest of Sheffield City Council and the city itself. And sometimes we get it wrong.
There's a level of competence required, isn't there? Liz Roberts is out there. She's our political reporter. If she walked in here, sat at that mic and said, vote Labour, they'd sack her. Because that's just,
that would
that's not that bad.
If
that's not cost anybody 130,000 quid.
Can I just say, if that's the case, I'd be prepared to defend Liz if that happened as an ex-trade unionist convener.
They would, because she can't.
Well, if that's deemed to be gross misconduct, as you know, with any employment contract, there's certain stages that you have to go through when you are taking action against someone. And if you dismiss someone for any action, it has to be deemed to be gross misconduct. But you have to trust the council in taking forward any actions of disciplinary against individuals, and that's personal to them and the council, and those actions are taken. However, on most of the examples that you have cited, they have not been deemed to be gross misconduct. In other words, a response would be dismissal.
Thank you very much indeed. It's Toby at BBC Radio Sheffield, sat with the Sheffield City Council leader, Julie Dore. She's here for another 19 minutes. If you've got a call you want to get in, this is your moment. This is your perfect moment. 0800 111 49 49. Let's go to Lodgemore, to Rebecca. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning.
What would you like to say to Julie, Rebecca?
Well, I've got 2 points. First of all, it's really disappointing that, in spite of the huge amount of knowledge and expertise that's been built up in the Tree campaign, the council is still determined to put together some sort of new plan on their own without involving any external expertise. So, yes, they've invited STAG for talks, which is really welcome, but those talks are about how to consult, not about what the plan is going to be. And that isn't compromise. That's, they're putting together plan A, option A and option B, and how are we going to present that to the rest of the city? That isn't compromise. And it's really disappointing that in spite of all the knowledge and expertise, and yes, we're amateurs, we're not paid to be enthusiastic about trees, but we've built up a huge amount of knowledge and expertise, and there's external expertise from outside the city, people who have already freely given their time and expertise, and would continue to do so if the council invited them to. And the other point that I think is really important is that I want to ask Julie whether she would support the call from Lord Scriven for an independent inquiry so that we can move past this wasteful and shameful period in our environmental history.
Let's ask them. First things first. Taking advice from external experts.
Right, okay. Well, first of all, I just need to go back over a little bit of history, Rebecca. On at least 2 occasions when I've sat down with STAG in my office, I have offered, certainly when we talked about the independent tree panel, where I offered to introduce another 2 members of STAG's choice onto the independent tree panel. You could have chosen any expert, whether it were a contractual lawyer or whether it were an expert on trees or any other expert on civil engineering, for example. I did make that offer and that offer was rejected. And then on another occasion, I offered to introduce a new panel when the independent tree panel made their findings known to the council, that then we would set up another panel that could scrutinise what the independent tree panel's sort of recommendations were. So, for example, if the independent tree panel made a recommendation that this particular tree or trees could be saved using these particular types of engineering works, however, these trees couldn't, then another panel with a choice, again, with you being able, STAG being able to introduce your own experts onto that panel to scrutinise those recommendations, and that was rejected. So I just need to get that out of the way, Rebecca. I have offered that in the past. On the current situation, I'm not quite sure how much you understand about the process that we are proposing to go through. But it isn't that simple that we are saying that we are just going to present Plan A or Plan B. That is certainly not the case. In fact, what we have said is that we are, first of all, going to engage in talks about talks. So that, in a sense, is to present to a number of interest groups. So we've got a variety of stakeholders that are interested in this particular issue, that what we are going to do is talk to them about how we want to get to a sustainable solution for everyone. And if during that course of talks about talks that you suggest, for example, that you would like to introduce experts in any format, then we are prepared to consider that. So it's not just straightforward where we're just going to present Plan A or Plan B, take it or leave it. That's why we're introducing talks about talks, to find a way of how we can get to the most sustainable solution that everyone can be satisfied with.
Rebecca.
I'm sorry if I keep on trying to butt in. What Julie's said is really welcome. I don't really understand why we have to get to the point of us asking for independent expertise to be put in. You know, Lewis Dagnall has been there when we've strongly recommended that external expertise should be brought in at the outset, and then 2 weeks later in the cabinet meeting, he was busy saying that the council believes that they've got adequate expertise within the council. If we want to get some trust in the process, why do we have to ask for that external expertise to come in later down the line? It's apparent. The message has been going out loud and clear to the council all along that we need some independent external expertise in this. Why do they have to wait for us to look at a proposal and then say, can we have an expert view on this? Why don't they bring that in now? Why are they waiting?
Absolutely, Rebecca. I think you and I have had conversations about this. I do understand where you are coming from, and I want to be as responsive and positive about this process as I possibly can. All I can do at this moment in time is reassure you that we are prepared to discuss with yourselves, with STAG, your representatives and other stakeholders, to find a way forward. We haven't completely dismissed the use of independent expertise. It is right that we do believe that we have the expertise at hand within AMI and within our own council. However, if if the way forward, and the only way forward to finding this satisfactory, sustainable solution, is to look at introducing some other independent experts, then we will consider that. But that is where, when we enter in, it's not, when you say later down the line, actually we're at the start of the process where we're going to have that conversation with you about how we continue through the process. So we're actually right at the beginning of the process, Rebecca, and we will consider that.
I want to go to Justin in Aberdale. Thank you, Rebecca. Justin, what was your question?
Hi, thanks, Toby. Yes, I just wanted to ask Julie if she was aware that there was an investigation by the Forestry Commission into the lawfulness of the tree felling programme in Sheffield, and indeed whether prior to the inception of Operation Keto with South Yorkshire Police, where the council sat in a silver command room with the council, with the police, with Amy, and indeed a private security firm called Savoca, whether the council had actually made South Yorkshire Police aware that there was an ongoing investigation into to the legality of the tree felling programme in Sheffield. I think there's a whole kettle of fish that remains to be discovered in Sheffield, and I would sort of repeat calls for an independent investigation, because the rabbit hole seems to go incredibly deep. So
let's ask about that then. Were you aware of the investigation?
Well, I think I was, Justin, because I think you mentioned it in a previous meeting, whether it was a cabinet or a council meeting. So I am aware that the Forestry Commission is carrying out an investigation. Not being sat in the Silver Command room at the time, I'm not aware whether that was discussed or not. I'd be surprised if everyone involved in the Silver Command weren't aware of that, because you have made that known. I would just say about an independent inquiry. As I've just said to Rebecca, and in fact you yourself have just pointed out, an investigation is being carried out by the Forestry Commission. We are at a position where I think everyone has agreed, and we've received a positive response from STAG. We are now at a position where we all accept that we all need to move forward. We all need to compromise, and we all need to get the most sustainable solution, not just now for the remainder of the last couple of 100 trees within the core investment period, but certainly over the next 20 years of the sort of service maintenance contract of the Amy PFI contract. So it needs to be a long-term, sustainable, satisfactory solution about how we deal with our street trees. We're at the start of that process now, and I think what we need to do is carry on with that process to try and get to a point where we can all feel satisfied on the way forward for the city over the next 20 years.
How do you feel about the amount of council time this is taking up, Julie? The issue itself, the tree issue itself, when we speak about that, the vast majority of our texts are like this one here. Why take notice of these tree protesters who don't live in the area? What about the residents who are fed up with tree roots, damaging their tree foundations? What's another one? House foundations, I beg your pardon. Got another one here. Jail these idiot protesters should be jailed for total disregard for the laws of this country. You know, so much so that's the majority of what we get. Do you feel that you spent a lot of time on a very vocal minority?
I think we've spent a phenomenal amount of time, actually, but that I'm not saying that that's not necessarily unjustified, because if people feel dissatisfied, even if it's one individual that comes to my surgery that raises an issue, just like Pat has raised the issue around scaffolding in Foregate, then it's justified that people should be able to raise that issue. The difficulty is that it's such a complex issue, a PFI contract. It's such a complex contract. It's around core investment, it's around the maintenance and management contract, and the complexities within the contract is very difficult to explain to the wider population. But at the end of the the day, we all have to remember that it is a highways contract. It's not a street trees contract. And the fact that we've got unintended consequences of a highways contract, which means the removal and replacement of what a large minority, would I say, of people within Sheffield believe that it's unnecessary to remove this large number of trees, then it's become more about that than the actual highways contract. But at the end of the day, it's a highways contract, and the people of Sheffield deserve the best highways, pavements, verges, street lights that this contract will deliver.
Julie Dore is in the hot seat this morning, the leader of Sheffield City Council.
Just leave them alone, take your machines and go home, don't close them down.
This is BBC Radio Sheffield.
It's just gone 10:30 headlines with Nick Wilson, the other one.
Thanks, Paulette. The Bishop of Sheffield, Pete Wilcox, is to chair talks between the council, their contractor Amy, and the Sheffield Tree Action Group. The move comes following letters between STAG and Councillor Lewis Dagnall, the cabinet member for the environment on the council. Talks due to take place later this month.